a fresh dip and buckle up. We want to welcome everybody to Beast TV tonight. We kind of got a little celebrity on tonight. Larry, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing good, and we do have a celebrity on tonight, and it's not neither one of us.
Not these two imbeciles. Well, we want to welcome everybody, and if you're in the chat room, man, enjoy yourself. Everybody in there will welcome you with open arms, and we are glad that you are here. And Larry, I don't know, you want to go ahead and introduce our guest tonight?
I sure will. Tonight we have the host of World Bigfoot Radio, Mr. Duke Sullivan. How are you doing tonight, Duke?
I'm doing great. How's everybody out there doing tonight?
We're doing good, and we want to thank you for coming on tonight. We have chatted a lot in different chat rooms on different podcasts, and it's just a pleasure to have you on tonight, Duke.
Oh, I'm really honored to be here too. You guys come highly recommended, and for me, it's kind of a treat too. Usually I'm half asleep when I'm on one of these shows, and this one I was all like excited 3 hours ago going, ooh, Beast TV tonight, cool.
We got him fooled, don't we, Larry Porch?
Oh, yeah, we'll just try to keep that
up. Duke, before we get started, why don't you just introduce yourself and give us a little bit of background?
Well, everybody knows I'm Duke, just one name, like Cher and some of those other people. And I've actually been I've been interested in Bigfoot and doing research on it since the latter 70s. But I only started bothering to document anything about 6-7 years ago. And that's the point where the public started going, who's this crazy lunatic running around the mountain? And so I came out of the gate looking pretty good because I already had, over 30 years previous experience looking into this, not just archive work, but being out in the field and talking to other people that had had experiences and stuff like that. So it kind of gives you a leg up on most of these guys that are like, hey, I saw a Bigfoot. I better get a camera and make a channel. I did not want to be a public person on this thing. The whole thing happened butt backwards because I was actually in a situation where I was looking for a new place to live, and I had found a new place to live, but they had to remodel it. And so they couldn't let me move in until I finished remodeling. And I'm like, who cares? It's spring. I'll just camp out for a while. Where's the nearest place with Bigfoot around here? Let me go camp there for a few weeks, I'm serious. And right away I found a spot, and it was only about 2.5 miles from town. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. It can't be this easy. Look at their signs of these guys being all over the place up here. This is like right next to a big recreation area. People go up there and walk their dogs and stuff during the day. Mysteriously, you can't go up there at night. It's closed after 9 o'clock. You're not supposed to be camping up there. That's totally illegal. Yeah, well, unfortunately for them, I figured out, right away I found a thicket that the Bigfoot had an observation spot in. And I went, damn, look at that. That's big enough to fit a tent where I'm going to be camping. And I think they kind of got an attitude about that the first couple of weeks I was up there. They kept pestering me in camp, and then I finally bribed their alpha a couple pork chops, and they left me
alone. I've seen a lot of video footage of you cooking pork chops on the fire.
What you saw that I filmed, those are literally, I cooked 4 pork chops, and 2 of them ended up going to that alpha so that pestering me because I was in their favorite observation spot.
We're not going to go hungry, are we?
Yeah, I think that's how I got those other pictures of the ones that I sent you for later on in the video reel, where one of my friends was taking a picture of me and a bunch of them were photobombing me in the background. That was about 80 feet from where my tent was. So when I was up there, I think they were following me around going, hey, has he got pork chops? Follow him around.
You might have got a picture of me in there.
Well, I tell you what, he was a stinky boy. I took those pork chops and I wrapped them in tin foil. I triple spun the roll around it 3 times. And then on the outside of the thicket I was in, maybe 25 feet from my tent, there was a little, a small tree that had been hacked off about 3 feet up. So I just balanced him on top of that. And about an hour after dark, sure enough, here he comes. You could smell him. He smelled like a rotting meat locker. It was just horrendously bad. And I hear him reach over and pick him up, and I hear the tinfoil crinkling a little bit. And then I don't hear anything. And well, the next day I found one of his tracks. That's the big 21-inch one that I have in the video reel that's got my foot in the middle of it. That's not foot in the heel. That's foot in the middle of the track. And that was about 60 feet from my camp. And then I went and checked, and the tinfoil was all there, and it was in one piece. It, whatever did it had hands, just unrolled it, dropped it on the ground. So I went, well, you litter bug, I'll pick up your damn trash. And I wadded up the tinfoil and I hauled it off. There were no bones there, nothing. I don't know if he ate the whole damn thing, bones or all, but there was no remnants of it otherwise. So I'm leaning heavily toward that was probably not a bear or a raccoon that did that, especially considering how it smelled. But it was pitch black. I couldn't see him from inside the thicket looking out there. There's no way I could see him at all. I just heard a little rustling, and then I heard, the tinfoil crinkle, and I went, oh, somebody's eating them.
Yeah.
So what got you interested into Bigfoot?
Being scared to death by one of these things back in 1972 when I was out sledding. It was the second week in February, and we had just had a cold snap in the county next to us, a record all-time low. It actually had 52 below Fahrenheit. So that's like really cold. And needless to say, even the tough little Arctic kids don't get to go outside when it's that damn cold. So we were stuck indoors for about a week and a half. And finally it warmed way up so we could go out sledding. It got up to about 20 below. So we went, yeah. Well, it's still 30 degrees warmer. Come on. That's like, wow, let's get a suntan,
Yeah.
So we decided we were going to go back to this one place we had looked at before, and we'd never gone there because it's where a fire road dead ended. And the reason it dead ended because there was a big bog there and you couldn't get across it. So why make a fire road there? You can't get any equipment across it, right? But we had always noticed from that side, the other side looked like a really big hill, really big. And we just went, man, I bet you could set up a sledding run there, But we never did it because you couldn't get back there because of that damn bog. Well, at this point, we suddenly had a little light bulb go ping above our heads and go, wait, it's been like way below zero for weeks. That thing's frozen solid. We could sled across it if nothing else. Let's go investigate. So we trudged the approximately 3 miles back there, and we went across the bog, and we got on the far side, and we found out, hey, there's a huge hill here. And we trudged up to the top of that, and we got to the top of it, and there was another hill on top of it. And we trudged up to the top of that, and there was a third hill on top of that one. So we were like, wow, too bad all these damn trees are in the way. It's super dangerous to build a luge run with big walls on it and stuff, especially where we have to turn twice, or we'll just fly right off this thing and we'll get killed. Because this is, like almost a cliff. If it was any steeper, trees wouldn't be growing on it, right?
Yeah.
And so it took a lot of effort to trudge through the deep snow to even get up there. So we spent most of that day just building this luge run, and then it was like, yeah, well, we got to let this thing sit here and melt for a few days and get solid before we can really use it. So the next weekend we came back again and went out there, and the conditions from a couple of days in between. So we knew it was all like, ooh, everything's nice and icy now, perfect, hard like concrete, let's go. So we got out there and we got up to the top of the run, and we were going to do like one slow run each, and then a medium speed run each, and then actually try to do a full speed run, because this was like super dangerous. If you went flying off one of these supers, you would hit a tree and get mangled. So we weren't even both going down at the same time. We had one guy halfway down the hill while the other one was up on top doing the rundown. So in case you got mangled, there was somebody still alive that could get help, right? I think this is the thing that saved us, actually, because I was the first one that was going to do the high-speed run. I went back up to the top of the hill for the third time, and when I got up there, I flopped down my little plastic streamlined radio flyer wagon looking sled. And I started to turn around and I realized something with the scene had changed. It didn't look the same as the last time I was up there. And I couldn't put my finger on it. And I glanced back again and I still couldn't see anything that looked different. And then the third time I looked, I realized what it was. And that's that everything around me was all deciduous trees that were bare, covered with snow. So you could long field of view, except over on my right-hand side, there's a huge black spruce tree. And what caught my attention is that it had 3 trunks. And 2 of them had long gray hair with little snow dingle balls in on it. And I went, well, that's not right. They're the right size to be the tree trunks, but tree trunks don't have hair on them with little snow dingle balls hanging out. So the first thing that occurred to me is that it was the local kids had found our awesome sledding run. And there was one up there spying on us, and our cover was blown, and everybody was going to be up there. And now the local kids knew about it. And damn it, we couldn't keep it to ourselves. They'd all be up there all the time and wreck it. So because there was, at that time, this is like I said, early 70s, there was actually snowmobile suits that had like fur on the outside of them.
Yeah.
So I thought it was somebody wearing the snowmobile pants with the fur on the outside of it. So I figured, okay, great. Well, I'm going to bust whoever it is. And I looked up a little bit, because all I could see was the legs sticking out below the bottommost branches. So I looked up to about 5-6 feet, and I can't see a face or anything. And I noticed a rustling higher up. And when I looked higher up to about 9 feet, then I saw this face peeking through the branches. And he had one hand holding down a branch, and he had another hand holding up a branch, and he was just looking in between. And as soon as I spotted him, his eyes got big, and he got this shocked look on his face like, oh, busted. And then he gave me this grin that looked like a friggin' bear trap. And I went, I am out of here, dove on the sled and tried to break the land speed record down the hill for the luge run. And apparently Dave could tell there was something wrong because, even like being intrepid and wanting to do a full speed run, apparently I was going like way the hell too fast. I wasn't dragging my arms or legs at all. And when I got near him, he must have noticed my eyes bulging and the white pasty look on my face as I screamed, run like hell, and went flying past at top speed. It still took him a good 15, 20 minutes to catch me at the end of the fire lane back at the house when I finally got back. I was surprised I didn't melt the snow. I was running so fast. But this thing did not look like a regular Squatch, which threw me for years because I kept, 72, the Patterson-Gimlin film had already come out. And I had seen that, and I'm like, well, is this one of those things? And I looked at the face, and I went, no, not even close. What the hell was this thing that I saw? And then I started doing research on the local legends, and that took about 20 years to sort out that apparently if you go far enough back in time, the reports of the Wendigo, they're actually talking about some kind of Bigfoot type thing. And all this other supernatural stuff with it being like looking like it's got a head like a fleshless deer head with glowing eyes and stuff like that. All that supernatural layered on later. And a good example of that I was just talking about the other night goes all the way back to about 300 years ago on the Upper East Coast when the fur trappers were still running around up there and they're all competing with each other. Excuse me. So if you found a good valley or something where there was a lot of fur animals, you would want to tend to keep the other trappers out of there. And most of them were French fur trappers. One of them wasn't. He was an enterprising drunken Irishman who decided that he would use their supernatural fear to his advantage and make them all think there was a Wendigo in this valley. So he took his snowshoes and he actually put fur on them. And then the legend on the Wendigo, when they took a step, they would leave a little bloody mark at the bottom of the footstep. So he had this little thing of blood with him, and he went and walked around the edge of the valley and left a little drop of blood in every track. And sure enough, worked like a charm for like 10 years. None of the French would come in that valley. They're absolutely convinced the Wendigo was in there, and he was taking advantage of it. But, here's somebody hoaxing Bigfoot tracks 300 years ago, right? So that's how far hoaxing Bigfoot tracks goes back. But what you got to think about is, where did they get this weird idea from? And they had this supernatural terror of the Wendigo. Well, they had gotten all the Wendigo stories from the natives. And if you talk to the natives, the oldest report from that goes back to the later 1600s. It was Reverend Thomas Guinard in his book Amongst the Tête de Bolée, so that they have this supernatural dread of this horrible phantom that lives in the woods. And here's the description that he gave of it. And this isn't word for word, but it's pretty close. And it's short and terse and sweet and to the point. It's a savage, covered with hair, runs around in the woods naked, and eats Indians. That was his description of the
Wow.
Wendigo. There's no supernatural anything. There's no glowing eyes, no antler head, or none of that. That was what he got from the Tete de Belay back in the late 1600s. So a lot of this stuff has been layered onto it. Some of the stuff from Europe with the werewolf, some of that kind of stuff got added onto it. There was a whole bunch of layers got added on there, and then you had Algernon Blackwood, who did his book The Wendigo, which doesn't really have anything to do with it and isn't scary anyway, but he added on another layer of supernatural there was some of the tribes that thought it was a supernatural thing, in as much as it was an evil spirit that would eat humans. So that's not good.
Yeah, that's been me running out of the woods too. What about you, Mark? You saw a Wendigo?
No, I haven't. But I tell you, I love looking at history and going back and reading these reports that's happened. And that is something that you have spent a lot of time doing, isn't it, Duke?
Yeah, I spent a lot of time on it, chiefly because when I got onto the Bigfoot thing, because of my situation, I started looking at, let's face it, back in the 70s, there wasn't much available.
Right.
But what there was available was all like, this isn't what I saw, what's going on. So I had to do a whole lot of research on that. And then I started running into some of these tribes have 4 or 5 names for different kinds of bipedal monsters, and they're not the same thing. What the hell is going on here? Not only is there Bigfoot out there, apparently there's several other things out there. So then that got me to, open up my mind about looking into some of these other cryptids and stuff. So I was on there's more than just Bigfoot out there cryptid train for, you could say, since 1972, essentially, because that's when I saw one. Like, that thing ain't Bigfoot. And it just, this thing is similar to apparently what they gunned down at the LBL, which is what I classify as a type 3, a Gugwe. Again, those are bipedal predatory monsters. And again, you can go back and find that name comes from the Micmac Confederation, the Penobscot and Passamaquoddy tribes on the Upper East Coast. They're the ones that came up with that name. And they had Bigfoot in their area. They had a name for that too. This is a completely different thing. And then if you start looking across the north, especially like around the border, north of the border and just south of the border, you start finding all the native tribes up there had names for this other thing. And like in northern Minnesota and up and across into the Canadian border, they call it the Tugawee. Well, how far is that from like Maine? And the tribe's got this almost exactly identical name that they're describing the same critter. And from what I've been able to find archive reports, I was talking to William Lunsford about this, and 1829, you got the report of the Bigfoot or mountain giant attacking the guys down the Okefenokee Swamp and northern Georgia, or excuse me, southern Georgia, northern Florida, and 5 of the 9 guys being killed, having their heads ripped off, and then they gunned the monster down. They brought out the town crier who saw it, measured it 13 feet, and all that kind of stuff. And everybody goes, okay, well, that's the oldest known Bigfoot report. Well, there's a report that I got that's just oblique, that came in from somebody that was doing weird stories about the War of 1812. And they mentioned that there was a platoon in the War of 1812 that had actually had battle with these wild men. And that's all I've been able to find on that. But there's a much better report that goes back to the 1780s. And this is from Lake of the Woods, which is just north of Minnesota up in Canada. And there was a guy named Mr. London that was up there with a whole crew with him. They were supposed to actually build a lumber mill and then start a logging operation. So they had everything imaginable with them for all the people that could do all the let's build the lumber mill. All the guys were going to do the logging. And then they had the support crew, which is mostly local natives, to go around and hunt, gather food to feed this huge crew. And they were only up there for like the better. This is a long report. It's like 4 or 5 pages. And they reported back to him and said, hey, we ran into one of these weird things. They're dangerous. And it's kind of too close to us. And he went, what is it? And they described it. And he went, what the hell is that? That's not a known animal. How many guys do we have extra? You guys go track it down and get back to me when you figure out exactly where it is. Okay, well, like 5 days later, the natives came back and went, yeah, we pinpointed it to this one area. And he went, okay, let's bring a whole bunch of dogs and horses and men with guns and go capture this thing. Yeah. Well, apparently they managed to do that. They put a nice musket round into its thigh, at which point that knocked it down, and it got swarmed by natives that clubbed it and beat it and tied it up. And they had it there for like 2 days. And what they described as cubs, 2 of them came into camp, apparently looking for their parent. And the whole story ends with them saying that they were going to, their plan was to ship it down the Mississippi River and put it on display in London. Now, there's 2 interesting things about this report, other than, of course, you never hear anything about it after that. Somebody got wind of it and made sure it didn't get there, apparently. But the other thing is that they got a close description of this thing because they had it in captivity in camp for several days. So you get an exact description of this thing, which matches perfectly with the beast of LBL, but does not match with Bigfoot at all. This is a freaking gugwe. So the earliest report we've got documented by white men on the continent that I can find is from the 1780s, and it ain't even a Bigfoot, it's a gugwe.
Wow.
Now, Mark, what do you got to say about that?
I don't know, but I do know that when we were up at LBL on Halloween weekend, that Duke had a special show on the Beast of LBL. And tell us what information that you have gathered from these reports from the Beast of LBL and that you have kind of taken away from.
Well, I'm not going to go into too much detail because you guys can just go watch the show and get the rest of the story. But basically what it comes down to is that Ohio Bigfoot researcher Jerry Klein was posting weird game cam picture that he had got. And he was contacted by one of the Kentucky DNR officers that had actually been there during the incident and said, hey, I know what that thing on that picture is, and don't go back to that area again. And Jerry went, what? I don't know what the hell this thing is. It ain't a Bigfoot. What is it? And he said, it's the same thing that, caused all the massacre at LBL. And of course, Jerry was just like, yeah, right. Who is this? So he looked into the whole thing and then contacted the guy back and talked to him on the phone and got a really long, ridiculously long, pages long text message from him for that. He got the rest of the details from him. And apparently they must have called like every DNR officer in the state to show up to this thing, but he just happened to be the guy living nearest to it, so he got there first. So he was there for the whole thing, including the military coming in, doing the mop-up operation, shooting the living bejesus out of this monster and throwing a rope around his ankles and using the deuce and a half winch to drag him up a cliff and throw him in the back of the truck, at which point the DNR officers were invited to try and ID this, whatever the hell it was, and they had no clue. But since he was right there looking at it at close range, we got a great description of it. And it wasn't no Bigfoot, and it wasn't no Dogman.
Wow. Wow. So there you go, folks. You need to go check out Duke's channel at World Bigfoot Radio and watch this, and because that's Larry and I's home territory where our main research area is. So make sure you go and check that out. Duke, when you first started entering the woods looking for this creature, why don't you just tell us the things that you did and the things that you learned and the things that you saw?
Well, in between my first encounter, I had actually hysterical amnesia for 2 years and didn't even remember it until my buddy that was out there sledding with me reminded me of it. And then for about the next 3 years, I didn't want to go into the woods very much, like very, very little. And really there wasn't anything to do out there except for hunting. So I was doing a lot of squirrel and bunny hunting very close to the house. And that was about it. And in the middle of the day, and that was it. And then if I wanted to go any further into the woods, I always had somebody else with me, and I was, lightly armed like Rambo. Then, I finally got to the point where I could stand to go out in the woods without being ridiculously strapped. And I got out there and started taking a look around. And really in that area, they left so little sign of their presence It's really kind of amazing because occasionally you would hear them, we'd hear wolves howling and we'd hear loons call, and occasionally you'd hear them do a whoop. But that was it. You never heard them do any other vocals. And when the wolves would go off, it wouldn't set them off. They just ignore it, which I always thought was kind of peculiar because apparently they do react to coyotes, but they don't seem to do anything when wolves are going off. They just, whatever, I don't know. But found very, very few structures. Only found like maybe 2 indistinct tracks, but that was because at that point, I was too paranoid to go off trail by myself very much. So I wasn't just wandering around off trail. I'd be more likely to find them. And then after that, I ended up moving to, a bunch of different states, and each state that I was in, I'd go, take a look at the local map and where's the likely areas that these things would be hanging around. And I'd go take a walk around during the day and see if I can find anything. And what started surprising me was that most of the time, if you actually took a good close look at the maps and tried to figure out the lay of the land and where's the most likely spot for them to be, they were usually there. And, it made me realize, like, wow, there's a lot more of these things around than people think there are. They're pretty widespread, A lot of people just started out back when I was a kid. They thought it was just Pacific Northwest. And I'm in northern Minnesota going, well, I don't know what the hell that thing was. So, yeah, at that time, there was like no recognition that anything like that could exist up there. Although there was Mr. Hansen that had the Iceman and the block of ice that he was taking around
Right.
all yeah, you know what I'm talking about, and showing that thing off for a few years. And he said he got that. He killed that during deer hunt in the Whiteface. And I've been up by the Whiteface, and you can't get in there during the summer. It's all bogs. I mean, really, you've got to either have some kind of a bog machine to get across it, or you got to wait until winter when it's completely frozen over. So, yeah, if you want to talk about a place that's super isolated with plenty of things for Bigfoot to eat that humans really can't get to most of the time, it fits the bill perfectly. Just on the face of it is like, is there a place in northern Minnesota where conceivably this could happen? That would be near the top of the list. Most people don't. Deserted, swampy, foresty northern Minnesota is the biggest bog in the entire lower 48s in northern Minnesota. It's 200 square miles.
Wow.
Yeah, humans don't go in there. There's no roads going through it. Nobody's going in there.
Wow. So once you got going with your research, after a while, it seems like that you would soon start to get confidence in what you were doing. Was you able to find a research partner to go in there with you?
Well, now that I'm out here in Montana, I got a whole team that are in different side of the state, and they keep me up to date on what's going on in their local area. And if it's something interesting, then everybody just swarms up there and goes and checks it out. We got no shortage of Bigfoot sightings out here. We can't even come close to being able to handle it. It's ridiculous. Practically everybody out here has had some kind of a sighting or an experience, or one of their relatives has, and it's just like so common nobody bothers to talk about it.
Uh-huh.
It's like, oh, I seen a moose walk across the road. Okay. That's about how much it registers up here. Cindy Goodbreak can tell you that too. When she first moved up to the smokestack in Idaho, she got contacted by the local sheriff's department that said, Cindy Goodbreak? Yeah. Well, we understand that you're new in the area and you're a Bigfoot researcher. Yeah. Well, we just had a sighting down by mile marker so-and-so, and you got a deputy heading that direction to check it out. Would you like him to pick you up and bring you along? Sure. She's like pinching herself going, what the hell did I do? What's going on here? But yeah, it's like, it's so commonplace up there. Everybody's like, yeah, Sasquatch exists. So what?
Huh. Well, that's different, isn't it, Mark?
Yeah.
Oh, it's way different than the South where it's like, you saw a bear,
Yeah.
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 Up here, you could conceivably get away with that because, yeah, we got 1,000-pound grizzlies. Sure, that's big enough to confuse somebody if they're standing on their hind legs.
Yeah.
And up here, it's completely the opposite. Everybody knows what a bear looks like, so they're like, no, that wasn't a bear.
So as your research progressed and you started documenting it, kind of fill us in on the different things that you were doing out in the field.
Oh, the how to be successful at finding Bigfoot evidence talk. Got it. First of all, get your lazy ass off the trail. You're wasting your time if you're on the trail. Sorry for the swearing, but this one always irritates me. And gee, I walk my trails all the time and I never see a Bigfoot or anything. Yeah, because you're walking on a trail. They don't walk on human trails. What do you think? They're dumb? They know if they walk on a human trail, they're going to leave a track and we're going to find it. If you go through a choke point like a narrow valley or something where you got like a pretty well-laid human trail or a little road or a fire access or something, and there's not much other place to walk, go about 50 or 60 feet off to the side of it and you'll find the Bigfoot trail where they're going parallel to it, but they're still not walking on it. And most of the time when you see their tracks on a trail, it's because they're crossing it at a right angle. They got to go across the trail to get to where they want to go. Whoops, they left the track on one side of it. That's a lot of times. But that's about it. If you're going to be walking around on trails and stuff, be prepared to do a lot of hiking and see a lot of nothing. Find a good, well-beaten game trail that goes off of this little hiking trail that you're on. Now follow that. Follow it quite a while. Look around you. Do you see anything out of the ordinary? Start looking for anomalies. Look for rock stacks. Look for trees that aren't where they should be. Look for tree structures. This is what we always do. And after you follow the game trail for like a quarter mile or something, once you have the experience as a researcher to have a good idea on where they are, well, you just go in that direction. Start looking for tree structures. Make sure you don't get lost. Generally a good idea to have another person with you in case you do get lost and you don't want, who following you around when you're out there solo anyway. And they are following you around. Once you're anywhere near where they are, they got, they are on you and following you. There's at least one keeping an eye on you, if not more. And then the other thing is, like I said, you start looking for anomalies. You start looking for leaners against trees. You start looking for branches and limbs and even treetops that are snapped off. Look for X structures. Look for sometimes they'll from the forest floor because you don't readily notice it. Oh, there's just more fallen logs there until you look at it close and go, wait, there's no stumps there. Where did these things come from? Something moved them here. Okay, well, they do make those, some people call them ground glyphs or whatever, and apparently there is a difference between what they mean when they're vertically about some of that. But you just start looking for that stuff, and most of the guys that I know that are actually good at this sort of thing, as soon as you start finding structures, you just start walking a big spiral around them, you're going to find tracks. Unless it's a really old deserted structure, they're either going through there or they're upkeeping it. So you're likely to find tracks around there. And we have other areas where we already know that they have massive structures that they built in the middle of a giant deadfall area, which is suspicious. Like the rest of the woods around it doesn't look like that. And then for several hundred yards, there's all just tons of deadfall all over the place.
Yeah.
And so you don't want to walk into it. And when you get far enough into it, you see a giant structure in the middle of it. Well, yeah. And then as you're walking around by that and going through all this deadfall, we find lots of tracks in there all the time. So these are all, tricks you can pick up just from, you need to find a decent area where they're actually around first. But then finding evidence of them, mostly I just default to go to where there's water and they're in. Walk the river banks because they leave tracks there sometimes. And look for tree structures. You find tree structures, especially like snaps, leaners against trees and stuff, they mark their routes with that. You can find actual regular travel routes just by looking for that kind of thing.
When you step off into the woods, what are some of the not so obvious things that you are looking for?
Well, like I said, mainly anomalies. You just got to be used to what a normal woods in your area looks like, and then you look for things that are out of place because they will do really weird things. I mean, they don't necessarily make tree structures. You'll find human stuff that they've moved around that's out in the middle of nowhere, and you're going, what in the hell is this here for? This doesn't make any sense. Rich Soul found one of those where they ripped out a concrete bench with a steel post into the ground, poured into a pad in the ground, because apparently they didn't like it. And they took it about 100 yards and threw it in a ravine.
Huh.
Wow.
And right next to there's a huge X structure, a teepee.
Wow.
Yep. Yeah. So they do weird things. Another one, I had three different people who came across, and this is really creepy, little teeny chairs, like the kinds you would find in like a kindergarten kid's classroom. So like kids would have maybe in a playhouse.
Uh-huh.
Just sitting out in the middle of like a floodplain, maybe 10 feet from a tree structure, like as if, a perfect spot for a kid to sit and look at the tree structure and admire it. That's weird enough all by itself, but I had people in three different states within about 3 months of each other find the same thing and showed me pictures of it too.
Hmm.
And that's a real head scratcher. You're going, what the bleep is going on with this?
So what is going on with that?
Hmm?
What's your assumption that's going on with that?
No idea. I don't think it's Bigfoot related. I think it's, something else going on there, but very peculiar nonetheless. I mean, they didn't find any Bigfoot tracks around in any of the three circumstances. It was just little bitty chair sitting on a floodplain in the woods with a tree structure right there. And it's like, whoa, what is this?
Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah, nowhere near a trail, not a game trail, nothing. Just out in the middle of nowhere.
Huh.
No other signs of humans being there or anything. Really peculiar stuff. And people run across this, and unless you have like big network with people talking to you all the time, you don't get to see these little weird patterns. Like, what the bleep is this? It doesn't
Right.
make any sense, and it's popping up in several places all at the same time.
Wow.
But yeah, as far as the tree structures go, that's what I've been mainly working on for the last 5, 6 years. I got a couple other people that are really into it in different parts of the continent that have hot areas, and we compare information that we can figure out on. We got a lot of it worked out at this point. Like an X structure, as far as what we've been able to figure out, an X structure is just a territory model. Hey, we're here, here's where we live. If they put a leaner on one side of it, that's actually a warning. That's a keep out sign. Don't go past the side with the leaner on it. Have an X on the ground, that's actually a welcome mat. Hi, we're here, come visit. And yeah, some of the other stuff we have no idea yet. Like their asterisk structures, we haven't figured out what that means. Still no clue. They don't make them very often though. It might be like a central territory. No, it doesn't seem to be anything they put near trails either. Although we did find one with a fairly undisguised Bigfoot trail going to it. We found a 13, 14, and 16-inch track on the way to it. And that was just this fall.
Let me ask you this, and this is one thing that we have found that is a common denominator down here in the South. Once you get into the back country and off the hiking trails, when you are following an animal trail, do you find a larger, what I call a booger trail, that runs parallel with the different known animal trails?
Absolutely. We found that a bunch of times. One of my favorite ones is there was a deer trail that was going along the base of this hillside that I followed one time when I was going out there. And the next time I was up at the top of the ridge and I noticed a Bigfoot trail dipping down the. I followed it and it got down real close to that other game trail, and they had three different ambush spots that they had made there. That they had put little brush and fallen timber and stuff there so they could hide behind it and be right next to that deer trail. So yeah, I've seen that a lot, and that's one of the reasons that I like to follow the deer trails initially, because while you're on the game trail, you'll look around for those ambush points, see if they've got a blind there somewhere. That'll give you more clues on where they could potentially be. Another thing is if they got like if you found a trail that you think that they're using because it's marked with the leaners and branch snap offs and stuff like that. When they got the tree snaps with the twists, one thing that we've been checking, it seems to us like if they do a twist to the right, there's a trail to the right. If they do a twist to the left, there's a trail to the left. You may not be able to see it, but there's something in that direction. If you go that way, generally there is something over there.
That's really interesting. What?
Well, like I said, we've been working on the tree mystery here for a while now, so we're starting to figure it out because we got enough people that actually have access that can go, okay, well, I'm going to go check it out in the area where mine are and see if it does mean anything, you know.
Yeah.
What
Well,
other?
really,
Go ahead, Larry.
I was just going to say the tree structures are something that, you know, the less experienced researcher comes across and they don't understand. And it would be great if we knew the meanings of what we see as we're going through the woods. That would help in the whole puzzle a whole lot, for sure.
It's my suspicion that some of this stuff with the tree structures and the rock markers are the same exact trail marker system that the natives were using. And either the natives got it from Bigfoot or the Bigfoot borrowed it from the natives, because a lot of it seems to be similar. I can't guarantee that yet. But if you want something to research in your own area, check that out, look into it.
That's great advice, definitely.
Well, one of the areas that was a hot spot this fall, we were just there, and you know how the Indians used to make the trail markers of the Indian trees, where the thing would come up and then it would bend and then it would go back up again, right? And we found a sign, but it looked like there was old, really ancient crumbled megaliths up there that we were walking around filming. And when we got to the top of the hill, there's not one but two of those Indian trees up there on top of that hill. And I was like, oh, that's not suspicious at all. Yeah, so it's real interesting. And you do find, we got megalithic stuff here in Montana. Most people don't know that, but there's megaliths here too. And those same areas where there's megaliths, there seems to be Bigfoot activity around them. Plus, you also hear about activity from other cryptids, little people, and stuff like that. So those are areas where if you find out there's, you know, ancient megalithic structures around your area, those are good places to go look. Go look for tracks of tree structures, see if you find anything.
Larry, he just mentioned the little people. You got any little people questions?
You know I do. Duke, have you had any encounters with any of these other cryptids that you know 100% that's what it was?
Honestly, I've seen signs of some of them. The little people out here, we've got what they call the Narumbi, and what's the other Blackfoot name for them? Namirigar, I think. Mm-hmm. They're about 1.5 feet tall. They have shark-like teeth. They're really vicious. They attack in packs. They're super fast, have super strength, and use poison weapons. So therefore, the natives are way more scared of them than they are of Bigfoot. Their Bigfoot tracks, don't follow them very far because he might be watching and think that you're trying to trail him and hunt him or something. If you see little person tracks, apologize for being there and get the H out right now. That's their opinion on it.
Well, I've read that opinion before. I've read where you gift them or something.
Yeah, if you intrude into their area or something, you're like obliged to apologize and come back and leave them treats and apologize again and say, I ain't coming back. Sorry. Don't come play at my house and throw curses on me. I'd appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Hate it when that happens.
Yeah, no. Bigfoot are fairly reasonable compared to some of the little people tribes. The Narumbi here have the reputation of being friendly with the Crow tribe. Apparently they got some kind of deal going with them centuries ago and they get along with them okay. And I can't remember, Miniku, I think, was from either Blackfoot or Sioux. I can't remember. Sorry to folks that know and I don't. But he wasn't Crow as far as I remember. And he actually had a situation where he was on a battlefield with another tribe and the little people showed up and helped him.
Wow.
So yeah, this is, there's this kind of weird thing where there's like apparently that one tribe that they like and there's some people that they like, and other than that you can eat dirt and be a pincushion of poisoned arrows as far as they're concerned. I had a guest on my show who's a Crow native, and she was talking about her great uncle having interactions with him up in the Bighorn Mountains back in the 1940s and 50s. And he actually talked to him, and he was one of the elders in the tribe, and he could speak the old version of the Crow language. And that's what these things were speaking. Understand all the words they were saying because he didn't know the language completely. So he wasn't sure if it was their words or if it was really old Crow words that he didn't know.
Uh-huh.
But it kind of freaked him out because he started wondering, why do they still know this language and we haven't used it for so long? Or are these the same little people and don't they age? So that freaked him out. And then they asked him one time if he wanted to come visit their underground, their little underground city or whatever it was. And being savvy enough to the local legends about that, he said, no, thank you very much. I don't want to do that. Because if you go, legend, just like over in Europe, if you go, take the invitation to go visit the little people, you ain't coming back.
Yeah.
Hotel California.
Yeah. Now this guy, he had some reason to trust him because they saved his life at one point. He got friendly with him and he gave one of them a can of peaches, which it gobbled down in one gulp apparently, just upended it with a whole can, which impressed him. Big mouthful of shark teeth, and whole can full down. This thing's only 1.5 feet tall, right? So in the middle of the winter, he was snowed in. He couldn't get out of his cabin, and he had like 6 feet of snow piled in front of the freaking door, and he's running out of food, and he's worried. And all of a sudden, he hears this knock on the wall. He's like, wow, somebody came up here to help me. I need help. Yeah, he's trying to shove the door open. He gets it open barely a crack, and he's peeking over the top of the snow. There's a dead deer there.
Wow.
He's like, well, how did this dead deer get here? So he digs out enough of the snow to get the door open and yank the deer inside. He's looking it all over. He can't find a wound on it anywhere. Well, I'm not going to look a gift horror in the snow. It's gift deer. So he decides that, I don't care what killed it. I'm starving. I need to eat food. So he dresses it out. And after he dresses the deer out, he finds there's a little arrow about 6 inches long that was in its heart.
Wow.
Huh.
And then he had a pretty good idea who it was that brought him some food to keep him alive. Because they wanted more peaches next year. Dang it. But his family, after they found out he was interacting with these things, they got really scared and they made him move out of that cabin and quit being he was supposed to be just the summer ranch tender up there in that cabin and watch the cattle that were up at. But he liked it up there so much he'd stay up there during the winter too. And they kind of nixed that after a while. I'm like, no. You're coming back and living with us before you decide to go visit them and we never see you again.
Wow. I've heard stories about them, but I've never heard any, I guess, recent accounts, really and truly.
The scariest account of those little guys was when they got involved in a war between the Crow and the Sioux, and that was pretty horrific. A whole bunch of humans got killed in that one.
Yeah.
Wow. That's wild. I know Larry and I, whenever we're traveling, we love listening to those little people's stories.
Yeah.
And they're captivating. Now, getting back to Bigfoot, tell us some of your interactions that you have had with this creature.
Oh God, I have interactions with them constantly. I probably had like 5 or 6 just this summer. The last time we were camping up there, they sent the juveniles into camp to come harass us, and the little jerk sat there and threw pebbles at my tent for an hour, so I couldn't go to sleep. And we got them an audio recorder the second night. They were in camp for 45 minutes, messing around, moving everything. You can hear them walking. One of them actually walks over and taps the audio recorder with his finger.
Yeah.
And and then between the 2 nights when we had them in camp, and both nights they were doing it. The second night I actually fell asleep, and then one of them came over right next to my tent and woke me up. I heard him take a step next to my tent and snap a branch. And I woke up and I went, "Hey, there's donuts on the coffee table. Go get the donuts. I'm going to sleep." We literally had a box of donuts that we had left on the camp table. So if they were hungry, we left donuts for them. They didn't take any. Apparently, they didn't like them. But the next day, we went further down the valley to go check out one of the giant teepee structures around that area and see if we could find any new tracks. And when we came back, there was a 13-inch track right next to Mike's tent that hadn't been there when we left. So we followed, and we found their favorite hiding spot over there where they like to watch the camp from. And then off to the right of it, there was a trail, like I said earlier, where we found a 13, 14, and 16-inch track heading over to this big asterisk structure. So we knew it was the kids in camp that time. The time before that, I had Sonny up there visiting from Alaska. And that time we had 2 adults by the camp right next to our tent. The first night we were up there, we got up there late, didn't have time to set up both tents. So we threw up the 2-person tent in that one. And she woke me up about 3 a.m. and said, "There's Bigfoot around the camp." I'm like, how do you know? "They've been walking around the tent for 2 hours." And they're like, "Well, why didn't you wake me up?" Said, "How do you know it's Bigfoot?" "Well, I can hear their footsteps every so often, and they're making that noise." And I'm like, "What noise?" "When do they go?" And I'm like, "Yep, they do that." And she goes, "What are we going to do?" Well, she's from Alaska where the Bigfoot are all super aggressive, right? So she's all freaked out. And I said, she's like, "What?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm going to go have a cigarette." So I unzipped the tent. I got out, light up my cigarette. Then I realized, oh, there's probably a Bigfoot standing like 10 feet away. Maybe we should like warn him off a bit. So I go fumble around, find the flashlight that's down by the fly of the tent. And I'm like, "Hey guys, check out my new flashlight. It's pretty neat. 1,400 lumens." Heading it slowly in every direction to giving him a chance to get out of the way from, so I don't blind him with it. And going, "Yeah, you guys better not get too close to the tent the rest of the night, because man, even if you run fast, I'll catch you with this thing." And sure enough, I don't know if they understood me or what, but they didn't come back the rest of the night. They left us alone. But the next night, we were in camp about 45 minutes before dark, and one of them stepped right out in the open about 80 feet away and let Sonny see him for about 45 seconds.
Wow.
And I promptly ran over there and got a measurement on it and looked in the same area and everything. Measured, because like, she's right here. She just saw it. Let's get a good measurement right now. And he was about 10'4" and about 6 feet across the shoulders. So that made her day. She seen the look on her face. I wish I couldn't get up fast enough and get the camera up and turn around and get past the edge of the tent to get him on video. But I should have just taken a picture of the look on her face, because that was priceless.
Yeah. I can imagine.
Yeah, it was pretty great. I've rarely seen anybody's eyes that big before. And she also had the mouth dropped open, jaw hanging, going, "Ah." And that's pretty impressive for somebody that's actually seen him a few times before. So, yeah, apparently he was a big boy.
What kind was she able to give you a good description?
Oh, yeah, he was your average type 1, 10'4", 6 feet across the shoulders, human-looking face, black.
Wow.
Now, it's one of the adults that was probably in camp the night before. The next time I was up there, I had Scotty up there. I was camping solo with him, and one of them came walking past my tent and booted my air mattress, because the air mattress same width as the bottom of the tent. So all you have to do is boot the side of the tent, you get the air mattress. So me and the air mattress skid about 4 inches, and I'm awake, and I'm going, "What the hell?" And I don't hear anything. I hear Scotty over in the next tent going, "Leave me alone, I'm trying to sleep." And I'm like, okay, something's going on. So I unzip the tent, and I get out, and I'm throwing wood in the fire pit and getting that up. And of course, the fire's burned down to nothing but coals. That's why they're in camp, right? "What happened, Scotty?" And he's like, "I was laying here sleeping. I didn't have the mattress in here. I just got my ground pad, and I felt the ground shake, and it woke me up. And then I felt it shake twice more, and I didn't hear anything. The ground shake 3 times." And I went, "What happened then?" He goes, "Then I started hearing this weird noise." And I'm like, "What?" And he goes, "Yeah, that's what I was wondering. I was laying here half awake going, what is that noise? That's not an animal." And I realized I had heard it before, but I couldn't place where it was until after about a minute and a half, 2 minutes, I was awake enough. And I went, "That's one of those empty plastic water bottles that I left in front of my tent. Somebody's got it in their hand, and they're squeezing it over and over again, about a foot away from the fabric of the tent where my head is." And at the point where he yelled, they just stopped and took off. Apparently that was the end of the practical joke there. But what I found telling is that they actually woke me up first. They walked over and booted my air mattress like, "Dude, check this out. It's going to be hilarious." So yeah, they definitely have a sense of humor. And we've been up there camping on the same spot for years now with different, researchers and different groups of people. And when we have a big enough group, they stay far enough away from camp. You usually can maybe catch a glimpse of them running between trees or something. That's about it. But if you have a small number of people there, 1 to 3 people, as soon as you go to sleep, they're right in frickin' camp checking out everything. And that's like every time we were up there this summer, they were in camp. So how much interactions do I have? Constant. Every time I go up there, they're there.
Wow. And they're not shy. It seems they're not shy about letting y'all know that they are there.
Well, they know that we know that they're there because we've been going up there doing research on them for years. And they've noticed that, like, we can actually find their trails. We find their big structures out in the middle of nowhere and sit there and take them on. And out loud say, wow, this one's awesome. You guys should make another one like this, just in case they're listening and they understand us. But at the very least, they seem to appreciate the interest in all of their artwork. And now this one's funny. Right across from our camp, if you go across, you have to go up an embankment about 10 feet and across the road. And then you go up the side of the mountain about another 50, 60 feet up. So that's, 150 feet of walking to get up there. You go across the side of the hillside a little bit, and there's a big rock promontory. And right there's a spot between the trees where you can see through the canopy of the trees and see the camp perfectly.
Uh-huh. Just
the camp. Not the area around it, nothing, just the camp. And there's Bigfoot trail going from that right up the hill. So I brought Sunny over there to show it to her, like here's where they're observing us when we're in camp. This is their spot on this side of the river. And as we're walking back, she goes, look at that X over there, which I had never even noticed before. And I'm like, wow, good eyes. Let's go check it out. So as I go walking over there, about 40, 50 feet past it, there's a deer laying down sleeping, gets up and runs away. And I get over to the X structure, and I'm going like, look at this. And we filmed this. This will be out in the summertime video I'll be releasing here shortly. Somebody had moved one side of the X. They had shoved, you could see where the bottom of it had been shoved about 1.5 feet downhill. All the leaf litter and dirt, pine needles was moved out of the way to make it perfectly, perfectly lined up, perfectly symmetrical. It must have been out of alignment. So for some reason, that one side of it got moved 1.5 feet, so it was perfectly symmetrical again. And I'm standing there looking at this, and I'm looking around like, I feel like I should be here with a white lab coat and a clipboard right now, taking notes, right? Yes, I'll give this one a B for the adjustment job, but you guys should really keep these things up better. It just makes you wonder. And other people have talked about this, how OCD they are and how everything has to be just so, exactly the way they want it. Uh-huh. And that's a perfect example right there. Apparently, this erosion or whatever had moved this thing in the wrong place at some point, and one of them just came by and went, oh, that's out of place. Moved the bottom on it.
Through your interaction and experiences, have you experienced any of the woo type activity, mindspeak, or any of that stuff?
The closest I come to that is I had, when I was down by the Blackfoot River, I think I might have had a mindspeak experience, which was just like it wasn't verbal at all. It was just empathic. And it was a feeling that there was a Bigfoot on the other side of the river that had been watching me, and it liked me. And that was it. And this is just the weirdest, because I was over there gathering firewood. There was a big fallen tree, and I was on our side of the river, and I was snapping branches off it, squatch-like. And all of a sudden, I just got this weird thing popped in my mind. Hey, you're really cool. I like you. It's a Bigfoot on the other side of the river. And I'm like, where the hell did that come from? Because I am like totally non-woo, have no paranormal abilities, except being in the wrong place at the wrong time. That's my own ability. So, like, no, I that's it as far as that kind of stuff goes. The other one might be where I caught the one out in the open. He had to pretend to be a stump. And I was going to take his picture because I thought it was a stump. And I was like, this is perfect. I just watched a video on pareidolia. Here's with the sun going down, this stump looks like a dang Bigfoot. I'm going to get a picture of it, right? So I reached down my belt and I start to pull my video camera, and I turn and look, and the stump is glaring at me a second ago, and the light hasn't changed that much. That's not a stump. And I don't know if it was him mind speaking. I just got this impression in my mind all of a sudden of him saying, yes, I am a stump. And I decided whatever the heck was going on, I'm not going to take any video. I'm going to put my hand away from the camera, and I'm just going to keep on walking. And those pictures I sent you guys, that's what we were trying to replicate. And I went, let's get a picture of this. I'll stand in the same spot I was in when this happened, and you go stand right where that stump was. I can tell you right where it is, because you see where that tree, that's where his fat butt mashed that tree down. So you just stand right there and take a picture of me. I'll even put my hand down by my waist, like where the camera was, and I'll be able to use this next time I tell the story. Well, then like 2 days later, he sends me the screen capture going, hey, what's this? And I go, wow, cool Bigfoot face. Where'd you get that from? Whose video is that on? Well, that's not on that picture I took from you like 2 days ago. And I'm like, what? How's that possible? He goes, well, I took it in HD. And I'm like, oh, send me the picture. Friends, and within about 3 hours between us, we had found 4 of them in the background. Now, I recently showed it to Christy, sci-fi gal, and she found a 5th one. So I'm not going to be sharing that picture to people anymore because it gets too scary. But apparently there was a bunch of us, and that's probably the pork chop gang wandering around there watching.
Acquired knowledge of these creatures provoke more questions, and the motivation to actually get out into the woods and find those answers. Duke, what questions stand out in the forefront that you are pursuing the answers for?
Well, like I said, I like to focus in certain areas because there's so much Bigfoot stuff to learn. Unless you're actually paying attention to one certain thing, it just kind of it gets lost in the shuffle because you got too many other pieces of information about other things coming in. So the last 5 or 6 years, it's just been trying to figure out more of the tree structure thing. I don't know what I'm going to end up going on to from here. You know, I'd like to do more of a survey in North America and try and figure out where more of these type 3 gugweed things are and where they're not. So people that are in areas where they're around could actually be warned that, hey, they might be in your area. So that might be something to work on for the future. But right now, it's just, like I said, working on the tree structure thing. And then I got researchers all over the continent and in other parts of the world that give me their 2 cents worth on weird things they've been experiencing and stuff, you know, and that information just gets ferreted away to the point where it's like, well, now let's look into the woo side of it. I've got all this woo information saved up. Well, look at all of that. You know? So, yeah, it's an ongoing thing. I don't think even Leonardo da Vinci of Bigfoot, you wouldn't have a lifetime long enough to figure it all out by yourself. So the only way we're going to make any progress is something that the deep state's been trying to stop for decades, and that's for researchers to quit being buttheads and arrogant and start working together. And that's one of the things we've been having success on, because we got some really good, knowledgeable guys right now that don't have an ego, already know Bigfoot's real, and it's been proved with the DNA study by Melvin Ketchum. And they're not going to get $1 million by dragging a Bigfoot in by his toe and showing him at, Barnum and Bailey Circus. That they're interested about what they are, how they're doing things, how they make a living, that sort of thing. They want the information, see. And these are the guys you want actually doing the research on it. And like I said, having people in different parts of the continent is really great for that too, because you can look at them in different ecosystems from the Arctic all the way down to Mexico. What are they doing in your area? Do they do this? No. Okay, well, that's because of, the environment they're into. And a lot of the time you find out they're doing the exact same thing. Really, the only variation seems to be because of the environment and the local food situation, what modifications they need to feed themselves, in other words, or to maintain cover so we don't find them very easy. But other than that, it's fairly uniform. And you find, sure you're aware, you find tree structures that are the same all over the world. I found a big, massive asterisk structure up here in Hidden Valley that compares nicely to one that Igor Burtsev found over in eastern Siberia. And I mean, like, they look like they could be side by side made by the same damn Bigfoot, Yeah. So, yeah, there's lots of commonalities here, and they're all over the world. So it's really fun to compare notes with the other guys that are out there, boots on the ground, butts in the field, which is what I like about your logo there, by the way. And no, seriously, these are the guys that are going to get the answers for you. The archivists can only get so much of the story for you. Yeah. The DNA people can tell you what it likely, at least what part of it is. But other than that, the people that are giving you 99% of the information are the people that are out there in the field doing studies on these things, interacting with them, gathering information on how they do things. That's where most of it is coming from. So most of my respect goes to the field to actually get out there and do something.
Well, you really said a mouthful. I know Larry and I have researched in probably at least a dozen states over the past couple of years. And these common denominators that you are talking about, we have seen in different states, and it helps us connect those dots. But when you're talking about the social media side of this and the ugliness, and how when somebody forms an opinion and they set it in concrete, and if you express a twist to it or whatever, it's almost like you have an enemy for life. Talk to us about the problems with this social media Bigfoot research.
Well, I think it's wonderful in some ways because people can actually network more effectively and get information out there. But the problem is that it opens up the door for all of the deep state trolls that are actually being paid to do this, not just the idiots that think it's fun. There are people that are being paid to do this, to go around and discredit the real researchers and to pump up the frauds. So people need to pay attention to that. Just because some show has a gazillion followers doesn't mean it's worth a damn. It could have a gazillion followers because they're not being censored. Now, my channel's been demonetized for 2.5 years. I know they're censoring my view count, my subscriber count, and everything else. We've caught them doing it. When I had Kevin Lang on the show and we were doing the Glag Saga, we had an episode that had 52,000 views. And it had been out for like a week. Okay, and Kevin was on there answering questions and got tired and went to sleep. And the morning he got up to finish answering the questions on the same video, which now mysteriously had 30,000 views, having lost 22,000 overnight. So this is a typical example of the BS that YouTube is pulling. Investigations are coming, guys. Hope you're ready. I already know somebody that's suing him that already won, and they're going to be paying him a big fat pile of cash.
Wow.
So, yeah, there's that problem. And the other problem is that you've got one of the things that they can use to keep people in the unity from having unity is to play on the mindset of the Bigfoot researchers. Most Bigfoot researchers get into this because they see something. They want to find out what it is for their own selves. And then they start telling people and finding evidence and showing them, and everybody goes, "You're crazy." Well, then the egomaniac, I'm going to show you guys I'm not crazy. I'm going to prove to you Bigfoot's real, and you're all going to eat dirt and kiss my butt because I'm going to prove it. And so then that becomes, from that stage, it's like, well, you can't tell me anything because you guys are all crazy and I'm sane. Okay. And they get this egomania thing going, and it's a closed loop, and it feeds on itself. If they're successful, they get more egomaniacal. And, the reason that we always should say that there aren't any Bigfoot experts is because, look, if you're proclaiming yourself a Bigfoot expert, to know about Bigfoot. At that point, you shouldn't even be doing any research. You already know everything. You're an expert, right? Who's a real expert? I mean, even the guys that have the most, they don't know everything. So there aren't any experts out there. Everybody's on a learning curve. And some people are early on the learning curve, and some people are way there. They've been doing it for decades. They know way too much about it already. But everybody's somewhere on that learning curve. So I think people forget that. It's like, oh, you dummy, da-da-da-da. They've only been researching 3 years. How the hell could they know everything by now? There's no possible way. It takes a long time to digest all this information and fact check it against other things and decide which parts of it you want to believe and which parts you're going to discard. And then you might want to get out in the field and actually check it in real world and see if it's real or not. So that takes more time too. So, I mean, you've got on. And then the thing is, like I said, with these egomaniacs, everybody wants to be the guy that proves Bigfoot's real and gets the next Patterson Gimlin video and blah, 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 blah. Well, they can use that to play us against each other because you want to be the guy that proves it. You aren't going to work very well with others. You're kind of an egomaniac maverick already. They don't play well with others. So all they have to do is just get them to be mad at each other, and they'll never work together, and they'll never make any progress. And it'll just be like the remember that 30 years of those goofballs running around giving each other a hard time and not doing anything? I do.
That's true.
Yeah.
And it still happens today.
It's still happening today. And what's funny to me is a lot of these people, they don't even put boots on the ground. The only trail that they're following is from that computer screen to the refrigerator and back. And But
Well, and look at how many of the old timers, we think of like the golden age of Bigfooting. You got, Peter Bird and Pat Allen and Renee DeHenda and Grover Krantz and all those guys. And compare them to some of the modern day squatchers. Some of those guys never even saw Bigfoot.
Yeah.
Peter Bird, never seen one.
Yeah.
Renee
John
DeHenda,
Green.
never seen one.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know. I have friends that have seen dozens of Bigfoot. These jabronis never even saw one, and we're supposed to idolize and lionize them. I ain't on that train, pal.
when you go out into the woods, and how would you describe your method of field research?
Well, like I said, I gave you guys a little brief on how we just kind of go into certain areas and try and look around for stuff to start with. Once we've found stuff in an area, we tend to do grid searches. There's something over here. We think their trail goes that way. Let's go grid search around this area and see what we can find. We rarely do, so-and-so saw a Bigfoot over here at mile marker such and such. Who cares? We don't go look. I've never gone and followed up on a Bigfoot sighting, ever. Never. I always figure out where they are on my own cell and go there. And a lot of times you get a sighting, oh, so-and-so seen a Bigfoot, and you go look at the topo map and you go, they're not living there. He was traveling from point A to point B. I'm not going to waste my time going over there.
Yeah.
That's just obvious. And other times you look at the map and you go, well, they're likely living here. Let me go check it out. Yeah, they are living there. So I'm really not, again, let's contrast with the early guys, the investigators. They didn't know how to find out where Bigfoot was. All they had to go on was the reports they were getting. So like good old dutiful John Green, when he'd get a report, he'd trot his butt out there and he'd do an interview with the guy that saw it, and he'd check out the local area. Sometimes they'd walk around, see if they could find any tracks or something. Sometimes, but that was it. That's where it stopped. They're just investigating. He would usually never come back again or anything. With the researchers nowadays, if we were in an area, got a report from somebody, walked around and found tracks, we'd be swarming that area all the time, trying to find more tracks and figure out where they're coming from, where they're living, where they're going to. So that's the difference between a field researcher and a Bigfoot investigator.
That's very true. And I want to remind our audience that's in the chat room that if you have any questions that you would like to ask Duke, put them in all caps and they will be sent to us. Let's put old Duke on the spot.
Yeah, ask me some wacky question about alien invasions on Mars 5,000 years ago.
Uh-oh. Duke, what's your most harrowing encounter you've had that you felt like you may have been in danger?
With a Bigfoot?
With whatever you found.
Yeah. Well, the most harrowing encounter I've had with a Bigfoot was the first one that I told you guys earlier on in the show. That was probably the worst one. The second one wasn't good either, because there was one sitting in the driveway of my house in the dark, and I damn near walked into him. And he wasn't making any effort to get out of the way. And this dude's eye glow, and we're talking about eye glow.
Yeah.
Lime green. He was sitting there on his haunches with his knuckles on the ground, so backer position sort of thing. And he was 6 feet tall, squatting down.
Wow.
And yeah, I almost walked into him. I got about 8 feet away from him. So that one was really scary too. And to this day, I don't know why he was just sitting there, because I was literally walking down the middle of the driveway and going to walk into him until I saw the eye shine. And I first thought it was a bear. And then I realized, eyes too big, too far apart. And at that point, I could see the shadow, and I went, and bears don't have huge shoulders. What the bleep is that thing? And this is when I was like 15 years old. This was in 77, 5 years after my first encounter. And it was right in the driveway of my house.
Wow.
So that one was very scary, too. And then the third one is when I was in my tent down on the Blackfoot, and they had gotten used to coming into camp and rifling around in our coolers and swiping the remains of dinners that we threw in our trash bag that we hung on a branch 6 feet up, so presumably things couldn't get it. Well, they sure could. They just reach in the trash bag, pull out all the nummy leftovers, and leave the rest of it in there. And we started noticing that right away too. Hey, there was a lot more trash in this bag last night. Where's the edible stuff is all gone. Okay. Well, one of them was apparently playing around with the cooler, and I had the cooler right next to the tent because we knew they were doing this. And the rainfly actually went over the cooler. So they had to lean down, reach under the rainfly, flip the lid of the cooler up, and then reach into the cooler to get something out of there. And the process of doing all that, as stealthy as they are, it still made noise.
Yeah.
And I woke up, and being half asleep and seeing something bulging into the upper side of my tent, I did the obvious thing that I would always do in a situation like that. I hauled off and hit it as hard as I could.
Whoa.
And I think it was a female, because it felt like I had hit a big plastic baggie full of lard with like thick shag carpet over it. And it didn't make a woof or a noise or anything. I didn't hear a footstep. Just all of a sudden it pulled back from the tent, and that was it. But the next morning when I got up and I crawled out of my tent, and this whole area is covered with leaf litter and everything. There's no clear ground anywhere except right where I cleared it up. So when I crawled out of my tent, I wouldn't get that stuff all over me, right? So there's clear ground there. Well, right up to the front flap of my tent, and the hole was about 2 inches from the front flap of my tent, there's a 19-inch track. And probably from the same individual I showed you guys the track from earlier on in there that I found about 200 yards away further down on the sandbar. It was probably the same guy. But I don't know if I smacked his girlfriend or his daughter or whatever, but he came and left a nice 19-inch track in front of the tent to warn me, like, don't do that again. And I took the hint and went, I'm not smacking anything that wakes me up in the middle of the night again without knowing what it is.
Yeah, that'd be bad.
Well, apparently as a human, you're too puny to hurt them at all anyway, so they didn't even register. You know, if it was a bear or something, you would have went, or you would have heard something, you know, because I whacked it a hard one, and nothing. Whatever it was just backed up silently, and he was gone. But we saw a big female in camp there about a month and a half later. She was trying to raid over at the other guy's tent about 30 feet away, and it was nice and warm, so I had the tent fly open and everything. Didn't have to unzip anything, and I heard this rustling, and I was like, what the hell is he doing up at 3 o'clock in the morning messing around over there by his camp, you know? So I crawled out of my tent and I sat down in the chair, and then I heard him go, hey, and I went, oh, he must know that I'm up. And then something ran out of camp, and I saw it run past his tree about 20 feet away, and it looked like the Patty profile, huge, like 8 feet tall. And it scared the hell out of me at first. And then I went, oh, he's right in between the lamp outside of his tent and where that tree is. So it's a shadow on the tree, making him look gigantic. That's what it is. It wasn't a Bigfoot, right? Then I hear the tent unzip, and he gets out of it, and I'm like, oh, crap. And then he walks in front of the lamp, and it casts his tiny shadow on the tree. And I'm like, oh, crap, that was really a Bigfoot. It was just like 20 feet away. So that one was a little bit nerve-wracking, too. But they already knew the score, that we were just, you know, hey, we're living here, you know, we're going to stay here and just down by the river for a few months. And we're not hunting. We're not going to shoot you guys. You don't have any weapons. Please don't come into camp and raid us. Actually, it got so bad after a while, we started leaving our leftovers down the hill toward the river, away from camp, so they wouldn't come into camp and pester us anymore.
Yeah,
that's great, Larry.
How often do y'all go out, and how long do you stay whenever y'all go out?
Wow. Well, the year we were down by the Blackfoot, I found 2 really good hot spots, and I practically lived there. I was out 176 nights that year. Wow. And between me and Jack down in the Blackfoot, we had somebody at camp every night for 3 months. Either both of us or one of us was at camp every night for 3 months. And the most recent show I did with William Lunsford, I actually talked about one of those experiences and showed video from it, where he thought the otters were playing the river, and he went down there at the night and put a flashlight on him, and it was a Bigfoot messing around the river, and he stood up and glared at him, and he went, oh man, I am in the wrong bleeping place, and he turned the flashlight on.
That'll do it. That's a long time to be out there.
Yeah, well, this we were staking out this area because we knew they were hanging an access from the freeway there where people could pull up to the river and you could go fishing there. And there's rockfish in the river. And all these tours fishing tours, the inflatable rafts and stuff would go in and out there. So when they'd come down the river, whatever they caught and stuff that was rough fish, they just throw it up in the bank. Well,
Yeah.
Bigfoot ain't dumb. So he's sleeping in the thicket on the other side of the river, waiting for the sun to go down. And then he'd come over and walk that side of the river and pick up all the fish that had been thrown there, then stop at our camp and raid it, and then go, I don't know where from there. But this is like almost a nightly occurrence. We could hear him turning over the rocks, walking down the river, because he was so damn big. The rocks we walked on that wouldn't move, they would flip under his weight. So you could hear him coming up the river, picking up the dead fish that they were leaving there.
Huh.
Wow. Larry, we better start on these questions. We've got a lot of them that are coming in. And the first one is from our friend Bama Murdoch.
Hey, Bama.
And he says, I love asking Duke Grizzly questions. He said, he asked, how many...
They don't edit well.
He says, how many times have you been chased by a grizzly through the woods?
I have not been chased by a grizzly yet. As a matter of fact, I've been so fortunate I haven't even seen one in the wild yet. I had black bears try and kill me several times, but no grizzlies.
Wow.
All right. Can Squatch ask, have you heard of any recent mountain giant sightings?
Cans, I'm actually saving up the ones that I got right now and wait until I have like one or two more and I'll have enough to do an hour-long show. But there's like 3 or 4 of them within the last 2-3 years out here in Montana that really lean heavily toward probably mountain giant. You know, we don't know for sure, but when you get something like picking up dual axle tandem pickup that's got a camper on it, so 3.5 tons, something picked it up, turned it over on its roof.
Ooh.
And I don't mean rolled it over. I mean picked it up, turned it upside down, left it on its roof, blocking the road.
Wow.
Wow.
So, yeah, if it's Bigfoot did that, that's a really big Bigfoot.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Diane Fowler asked, what do you think about the Y sticks?
Oh, yeah, they like to build things with those. I don't know what the deal is with it, but commonly when they're making some kind of elaborate structure, they like to find those Y sticks. And it could be just because of what you would think. It makes it easier to lay things across it and make some kind of a structure out of it, easier to intertwine stuff. But William and a bunch of other people I know vouch for that too. They find that really regularly. And so do I.
Yeah.
All right. Strange Land asked, he was thinking maybe some structures would line up with the moving of the stars as above and so below. He says on down, 3-stick teepees can be same as a pyramid, aligning with the stars and moved over time.
Yeah, I don't know if I included that picture of the 3 birch trees that they had moved into place and made a teepee out of right next to a boulder stack that we found. But yeah, we do find that kind of stuff, and it makes me wonder about that. That's one of the things that we're leaning toward, the asteroid structures. We're trying to get enough people in different parts of the country that have found those things to take some coordinate readings off what they're pointing at and see if there is some kind of an astronomical alignment to it.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, that's thinking outside the box. Okay, yep. Diane Fowler asked, what do you think about when trees are being leaned, or I don't know if she means if they're being pinned down, or if it's sticks that are leaning against trees?
Well, the ones that are leaning against trees are generally, what we've found anyway, is that they seem to be trail markers. They're marking a route. Uh-huh. A lot of times they'll do that with a tree snap or an arch. One of the spots we had up there in Hidden Valley, they had actually bent 2 pine trees down right next to the road. One of them was a snap and the other one was arched over. So it's like, no, not at all obvious you got something on the other side of the road here, which is where we then went and found an upside down X structure, about 30, 35 feet tall with the root balls upward. And one of the biggest arches that I've ever found. That one wasn't pinned down, it was planted. It literally taken the top of the tree and jammed it into the ground to hold it. And that's the picture you used for your promo, by the way.
Yes.
That's the arch. Yeah.
All right. Deborah Williams asks, have you had any reports on the red hair giants with tusks?
Yeah, those would be the regular giants. Or see, we don't know with that, some of that stuff. It's hard to classify what's going on there. I mean, yeah, there's the red-haired giants. That's the biblical Nephilim, and they're calling different things in different parts of the world, and whatnot. With the mountain giants, we're not sure that's what they are, and some of the Bigfoot have those lower tusks too. So that's not a common necessarily 100% decider. If they got tusks, they're this. Yeah, not necessarily. The other thing has been, supposedly ogres had those tusks too. And like ogres actually exist. Well, I hate to say they do, but Bob in Germany got a picture of one when he was over by the border of France, looking at him from a treetop. So, and that was on one of my earlier shows. Go look at the picture. And it doesn't show that he got tusks or anything. There's not much of his face, exposed. But other than he looks like Shrek without the antennas and orange instead of green, basically.
Yeah. Okay, Tom Gilner asked, could Duke describe the Goodwood face?
Yeah, go look at the illustration on the Halloween episode we did. That was from the description of the Beast of LBL, which matches all the other Gugwe descriptions perfectly. And it's just, by the way, the artwork for that was done by Professor OJ, who's the new on-staff artist for my show. And we're going to be rebooting the remainder of the Glag Sagas, and he's doing artwork for it. So you guys can look forward to that coming out. But Gugwe is just a lot like a Bigfoot, except for they have a snout, which has excessively big canines in it. They don't have dog-like ears. They have human ears on the side of their head. They have little tufts of hair on the top of their head like a lynx has. Oh. And that's been described by several witnesses that have seen them close up. But they don't have a tail. They don't have hocks like a dog man. They got legs like a human or a Bigfoot. They have claws on their fingers and toes.
Well, I don't want to say one of those.
Well, yeah, that's what did the LBL thing. I mean, everybody's been worried about Dogman all this time, and hey, folks, it wasn't even a dog.
Yeah.
Thing.
Say, Mark, no wonder. All right, Duke. Can Squatch wants to know, what do you think is under the ice in Antarctica? Say an alien base.
Stay tuned for Conspiracy Corner Part 6 coming out later on this spring. I had Part 5, actually, of Conspiracy Corner. Me and Wes Germer did that series quite a while ago. That down off YouTube, mysteriously enough, because there's something about that they don't like. Too truthy, maybe. Started talking about the Nazi expeditions to Antarctica, and all of a sudden they didn't like that video up. But you folks can still go over to BitChute and watch it on my BitChute channel. There's also a very highly watched video over there of a Bigfoot running that I put up on YouTube earlier this summer, and they copyright struck it and took it down within 2 days. Never mind the fact the guy that sent it to me gave me the right to use it and didn't copyright strike it. YouTube did that. And also on my BitChute channel, if you want to see that, some amazing footage shot over in Nova Scotia in 2018 of a big pregnant female trying to run away from a cameraman that didn't fall for the bluff and actually caught her on camera. Leo Frank, who's been on my show before, he was in episode 64, The Troll, which is also an episode if you want to see something really creepy. You see a picture of a Bigfoot that looks like a troll.
Interesting.
Mark, have you got that link up in the comments for that?
No, but after the show, I will be pinning it.
All right.
All of Duke's sites, the YouTube site, and Facebook sites. Let's see. Our friend Barry Webster, and you can see Barry on a previous podcast when we had him and his sister on, asked, what was the biggest Satanga that you ever saw?
Probably the one that was squatting in the driveway, and I'd have to guesstimate his height is probably about 10 feet, because, I mean, when he's squatting down, he was 6 feet tall.
Yeah.
So you got to figure he had at least 4 feet of reach standing up. The biggest one we've gotten on video, I showed you guys earlier, we got that pan down the side of the embankment into the woods, and there was that 12-footer standing there. And then walked a little bit further, and there was another 9-footer standing there watching.
Interesting. Christy, sci-fi gal, says, Duke, did you ever smell one? And what would you compare it to?
Oh, last time I smelled one was summer 2019 when I had Randy Caveman Yazzie and Kevin Lang from the Glag Saga and the rest of my team up here in Hidden Valley. And as we were packing up, getting ready to go, and the sun was dropping, they were getting anxious to make us get out of there. And we had one actually sneaking along the river embankment, getting too close to camp, and we could smell them. Both me and Caveman could smell them.
Uh-huh.
And, smell like, that one smelled like, sort of like a, dirty, wet dog mixed with an electrical fire, basically.
Huh. I tell you, I really like Caveman. I have been out to his place before, and it is just phenomenal. Some of the things that has happened and the things that he was showing me that happened on his property.
Oh yeah, people think he's like, exaggerating or making up stories and stuff.
No.
I'm here to tell you guys he downplays things that are going on. There's stuff that's going on that he don't even talk about.
Yes.
And some of the stories he makes them sound like less scary than they actually were.
Right.
So yeah. He's like, he's got that stiff upper lip British thing going on. Oh, pip pip Jerry, I just know the Bigfoot throwing stuff in my house. Just doesn't faze him at all. Runs out. There's a peeker in my window. I'm going to sneak up on him. Takes 10 minutes creeping up to the door where he's got his lasso. Flings the door open, runs out there. It's so startled, it almost falls over, starts to run away, and he actually gets a lasso on it. And then he realizes what it is, baby Squatch. And he's probably about to get mangled by the adults. So he lets it off the lasso right away.
Man, I haven't heard that one.
They mess with him. One that he actually did mention on my show is when, he's always got broken down vehicles, and he was trying to fix one. And it was after dark. He's laying underneath it, and something grabbed him by the ankle and yanked him out about 2 feet. Now tell me that wouldn't scare you a little.
Yeah, I believe it would. No doubt. All right. I don't know where we got to. I think we got to David Marrier. Do you think these beings have the sense to pass on experience or history?
Absolutely. They've got a language. They can talk to each other. They can tell each other all the same kind of stuff we can. They just don't have, technology terms and stuff that a lot of our language is superfluous. If you live in the woods, you wouldn't be using any of those big words. So they don't need them. And it seems like they in areas understand quite a few words in English, apparently, in addition to their own language. And the other people, the natives will tell you that usually they know quite a few words from the native tribe in that area too. So if you speak the native language that's spoken in that area, they usually understand that too. They're very smart. There's somebody I know that's working on believe it or not, they have an alphabet. I know somebody that's working on compiling it and trying to figure out what it means right now. Janice Carter on that too.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay, David has a follow-up question.
That's a different David.
Is it? Okay, it's David Blaylock. It sure is, Larry. Thanks for the correction. We know you're not going to pass up a chance to correct somebody.
That's right.
But David Blaylock asks, how do they know and understand weapons?
Simple observation. Most of the larger, smarter animals know what they are. Here in Montana, we're starting to have a problem where if you carry a pistol, you're okay. But if you carry a rifle, something with a long barrel, rifle, shotgun or something, the grizzlies and mountain lions will follow you because they know you're hunting and you're going to shoot something, which is either resulting in them getting a free gut pile or being able to steal the whole kill.
Yeah.
So, and if basic mountain lion or grizzly can figure it out, Bigfoot's got it figured out. They know what guns are. And, some of them, depending on how angry they are, they're not all that scared of them. It depends on how much they got you outnumbered or vice versa. If you're presenting, I think they can read your surface intentions like animals can too. If you're walking around the woods without a gun, not hunting, that's when you run into a deer that you'll practically step on. But if you're out there with a gun looking for one, they're hiding from you, okay? And I think Bigfoot can do the same thing. They can sense your surface intentions. They can look at you and go, well, this idiot doesn't even have a gun on him, so he ain't hunting. He hasn't got a fishing pole. He's not fishing. What is he doing? And they get curious. They follow you around for a while. Well, and he's nice and peaceful, and he isn't attacking anything, and, try to hurt animals or break stuff, or, they can just kind of like follow you for a little while, and they can pretty much guess from your surface intentions and what you're looking like and doing, whether you're a threat or not. And that has a lot to do with them. Their comfort level is how much interaction you're going to get. You should always keep that in mind. The more comfortable they are with you, the more interaction you're going to get. If you're acting aggressive and weird and unpredictable, they're not stupid.
I tell you, that was just a mouthful of what you just said. And I think that's something that we should all understand when we're out there in the woods.
Yeah, we have good success with it. Our team, we do not carry any guns. And we are in the middle of the animal attack capital of North America. There's more animal attacks per capita in Montana than there even is in Alaska. Okay. And the reason we don't carry is because, first of all, like I said, it makes the Bigfoot edgy, and they're not going to get that close to you if you're carrying lots of weapons around. Projectile weapons. They don't care if you got a sword, a battle axe, or a spear. That doesn't bother them at all. If you got a bow or a gun, they might stay a little bit further away. But the other thing is that in the areas that we're researching, we've already scouted them. And we know these are active Bigfoot areas where a troop is living. And in those areas, you don't really have to worry about mountain lions and grizzlies because there's only two types of predators that go into an area with an active Bigfoot clan in it. And that's insane and suicidal or already dead ones.
Yeah.
Because they know better. If they go into an area with an active Bigfoot clan, if that Bigfoot group has babies in there, if they got squatchlets running around, they're going to react just like a human parent's going to. I don't want a damn grizzly anywhere near my kid. It either better leave or I'm going to eat it.
Right.
And we got at least 3 reports from humans having seen Bigfoot's either eating or killing and hauling off bears. So they definitely eat bears.
Yeah.
Wow.
All right. Loretta Riggs asks, what do you think the whoops mean?
I think they're just signaling to each other. It's like the wood knocks and some of the other stuff that either somebody else in a different clan is or where somebody in their clan is. Get a fix on their position so they get closer to them. Okay. Or warning the rest of their clan members that dumb humans are too close.
Okay. Spencer Jameson asked Duke, what kind of areas do you look for as far as Bigfoot habitat? Anything specific that you can share?
Yeah, obviously bigger areas of timber with less humans around is one thing to look for. When they're moving from point A to point B, they like to run ridge lines, and they will frame themselves. They won't stand right on the ridge line, where if you're lower down, you can see them framed against the sky. They'll stay a ways down from the peak of it, enough that won't happen. But that's where you want to look for trails for them, moving from point A to point B. The other one is by rivers, because they like to be near water sources. Rivers are stationary, and so they'll use rivers just like we use highways. They know if you go 5 miles down this river, you come to this berry patch because, hey, it was there last year. Well, chances are it's still there this year, right? So they use the rivers for moving around a lot and stuff. And we also think the really big ones, if they're obliged to move from point A to point B, may be using the rivers for a travel route on purpose, because when they walk in it, they don't leave a track. It gets washed away. So that's how you don't find all these ginormous tracks, because they know better and they're trying to not leave tracks. That's why if you do find ginormous tracks, you usually find like 1 or 2, and that's it. Where's the rest of them? Well, they were smart enough to get out the soft ground and quit leaving tracks for you. That's where the rest of them are. That's why you found a track, because they made a mistake, and that don't happen very often. The little ones make mistakes regularly. The bigger ones, not so much. The other thing you want to look for is where there's junctions of rivers, where rivers come together, especially where there's wetlands. If you got big swamps and wetlands and stuff, where rivers come together, not really accessible and stuff, perfect places to look for them.
All right. Pappy Two Bears asked, Duke, have you visited Barry Webster at Res Squatchin'?
Barry's been on my show before. Hey, Pappy. Actually, I was supposed to be out there on the res with him this spring and go on a little mini expedition with him, but thanks to the coof, that was called off.
Yeah.
And he was supposed to be out here this fall, and some other stuff happened, so he couldn't make it out. So we're going to try and actually do that this summer. I'm planning on going out there and doing some res squatching with him, and then having him and his team of Omaha maniacs come out here and show him some really big Bigfoot up here in the mountains.
All right.
Okay, we're almost running out of time, so we're going to try to get through all these questions. But our friend Dan Ricky asked, what do you think about the Kandahar giant?
Hey, Dan. I actually looked into that in addition to the 3 reports that I got cross-referenced on it that are all pretty much public right now. I know somebody else that was in country while that was going on. And although they didn't have any direct information on it, they said when they were going on a special ops mission, they were loaded into 3 helicopters and they had to fly across this mountain valley to get to the far side where supposedly there was an enemy base. And while they're flying across this mountain valley, they kicked up 2 giants. The giants took off, ran from the copters, ran away at a right angle, and they guesstimated they were doing about 70 miles an hour, judging by how fast they were moving on the ground. So, yeah, I had an independent report from somebody else who was in that general area, saw 2 mountain giants on the ground. There you go.
Oh, wow. All right. Barry Browning asked, have you ever seen a bunch of leaners in a cemetery? These would be leaning on trees, headstones, etc. If you have, do you have any ideas on why they sometimes do this?
You know, that's interesting, and that's something that we've seen with stumps, not ones that have been sawed off, but natural stumps. We find them decorating in areas where the Bigfoot are around. They lean little twigs on them. They stick twigs in them coming out the top. We found this one area where we think they had like a daycare center. There was an ambush spot where 3 game trails came together, and a little ways up the draw from that, there was a bed. Somebody had made a branches basically. And then around there, I actually got video of this. I was standing in one place and I just spun in a circle. And just from doing that, you could see 7 stumps that had all been decorated like that, all in that little area. So I know they do that. Why they do that, I'm not exactly sure what they're up to. But, that does come up a lot. Deserted areas, graveyards, old megaliths, ghost towns, abandoned farms. They hang around these places. I don't know why, but those are, again, good places to look. And down in the south, you probably get a lot of this that you've heard of. Well, that farm over there is haunted. Don't go over there. How do you know the farm's haunted? Oh, we hear ghostly screams and cries coming from it in the middle of the night. You mean from that Bigfoot living in the abandoned barn? Yeah, but they don't know that. I mean, there's a ghost there, right? We get the same thing up here. Well, that mine is haunted. Why do you think it's haunted? We hear these strange howls and screams and stuff coming from there.
Yeah.
What kind of mine is it? Well, it was a gold mine, all played out. So there's tons of quartz around there. Yeah, it's a Bigfoot living.
Yeah.
Okay, our friend Robin Ward asked, Duke, have you ever been to the mountains in North Carolina?
I don't think so. I think going over the Cumberland Pass was probably the most eastern mountains that I got to see.
All right. Man, you gave me a good name, and I'm going to go ahead and apologize for butchering this one.
I'll correct you.
Cannabossum. Is there a type of person that they seem to be drawn to?
Yeah, honestly, it does seem like the mild-tempered, peaceful people are the ones that have the best chances at interaction with them. Most of the people that get a lot of video, a lot of pictures, have interactions with them, they're just really mellow, friendly, nice people. You hardly find anybody that's like really high-strung, tense, and aggressive that has any success at Bigfooting. Most of the people that are really good at it are like super laid back. And like, again, I said, I think they can read your surface intentions. And after they've been around you a few times, and every time you show up, you're acting like that, they're like, well, this guy's like mellow fellow dude. Okay, I can hang around there and not be worried,
You're right.
Yeah. Okay. Deborah D asked a good question, and I just want to tell Spencer and Rodney, this one is a nugget. So she asked, are you getting a sense of what family group sizes might be like in your research area?
Well, depending on what the local amount of land and food resources that they got available. For what we've been able to observe, it looks like there's probably at least years in between siblings. So they probably only get pregnant with one every 2-3 years. And some of the researchers have been reporting that they're actually starting to see twins, which is pretty freaking cool. Yeah. But even so, they have to limit how fast their troop grows, because they could easily have too many members for the local amount of food, and then what are they going to do? And if you move to another area, well, there's some troop already living there, and maybe they don't want you visiting, then there's problems. So I think this is one of the reasons I don't really believe in the migration. I don't think they migrate. I think they've got a local range that they move around, and they're in different parts of it at different times of the year, taking advantage of the food that's on it. And the reason I think that is because they take a lot of food, and if you had them migrating, they would be running into each other's territories all the time. And you ain't getting reports of gangs of Bigfoot savagely mauling each other up on the hillside behind my house. You don't hear that stuff. And if it was going on, we would be. I mean, believe me, they'd be making a racket. We would know about it. We would see all the torn up trees for 50 feet and stuff. We'd be able to find that.
I agree. All right. David Marrier asked, have you ever interrupted a hunt? And if so, what was your first indication you did?
No, I haven't. Although one of the areas I was camped was about 150 yards from where they had an ambush spot, where they were there like 3-4 times a week catching the deer. Yeah. And one of my favorite memories from that was they'd just gotten into position. One of them did a low whoop, and the other one did a little wood knock to signal back that he was into his position. And some idiot up on top of the mountain came out of his super rich guy house and let out a Bigfoot howl. Apparently just got done watching Finding Bigfoot. And of course, I'm sitting there listening to it, and the two Bigfoot 150 yards away are sitting there listening to it. And it was a pretty miserable howl. And one of the Bigfoot went, and the other one went, no. And I just started laughing my ass off, and I went, I don't know what that means, but it sounds like a bad review,
Okay, Robin Wood asked, why do they nest near springs instead of the lakes?
Well, I mean, the obvious answer to that one is that you can trust the purity level of the water a lot more than you can what's in a lake. You never know what's been dumped in there. Some of those little areas that they're near are not even springs. They'll camp around seeps, and I'm sure Bear's talked about this before, but some of those are actually petroleum seeps too, so they can get that petroleum off the surface and smear it on their already greasy hair, and helps keep the bugs off of them. Sulfur and whatnot, skunk cabbage, there's natural garlic, things like that to use for that. But I think mostly it's just they knew where there's a spring nearby. Well, there's your ready source of drinkable water. You don't have to worry about it.
All right, Duke, you're gonna love this question. Overbuilt Automotive asked, Duke, would it be in the realm of possibility to have a Bigfoot girlfriend? And if so, any tips on that?
Yeah, you want to go talk to those guys over in Russia. They got some scary stories for you. I had Rich Soul on talking about that. And they actually, the Orthodox Church in Russia has an old incantation that you're supposed to recite if you're a guy and you're out in the woods and run into a Bigfoot. They have an incantation you're supposed to recite to keep her from kidnapping you. Now think about this. This would have had to have come up quite a few times for them to make an incantation against it, right?
That's true. Very true.
Well, to build on top of that, Christy's Sci-Fi Gal says, tell Duke, don't hug the Wookiee. And Carol Ricker asks, do you have an idea what months the breeding seasons are?
I think their cycle runs pretty close to what a human's is, around the 9-month mark, might be a little bit long. And they're probably breeding with an eye toward having an infant in the mid to latter spring, depending on what the conditions are where they live. So when the baby pops out, it's not like the middle of the winter. That's a little bit tough to take care of. So I think they probably try and, orchestrate their mating cycle to be such that babies are born in the spring, summer, and, maybe into the fall even. Because, they're rugged and tough and everything, but like there's limits, If it's 30, even a baby squatch is going to have some problems.
All right. All right. Dan Ricky asks, do you think the Bigfoot population is growing?
Part of the reason is because the deer population is growing. There's more wild hogs running around the south. More food resources just means, more for Bigfoot to eat. They can make their population bigger. And I assume that they're sort of keeping their own limits on it, that they don't want to overpopulate areas and then run out of food and have problems. They're probably smart enough to figure that out. So they, distance themselves from other clans, make sure they got enough room and there's enough food and everything like that. But in general, I think the population is increasing. And, part of that is not only because we've got more deer on the continent than we've ever had before. We got less hunters out there hunting them or being in the woods. You got more people just hiking around and camping now than you had hunters. And 40 years ago, that was not the case. Right. Most of the time people went out in the woods, they were hunting. They went out there to hike and camp.
That's true.
Okay, well, we're getting towards the end of the show. And Duke, we would like to give you this opportunity for any final comments that you might have.
Well, just the usual, warnings to don't poke the puck, would you, or don't kick dog man, don't flip off the mountain giant, and don't hug them. But as far as if you want to find more of my stuff, in addition to my YouTube channel, which is World Bigfoot Radio, I'm at World Bigfoot Central on BitChute, Bright Eon, NewTube, and Library Odyssey. And I also have a radio show that's on every Friday, so tomorrow night, on tfrlive.com. It's streamed from the radio station, so you just got to go to the radio station. And their live chat there is really cool. Plus, you can post pictures to it. So when we're in live chat, we're posting pictures in addition to listening to the radio show. And that gets pretty epic when you have 3 or 4 researchers over there all trying to outdo each other with their pictures. Yeah. And I guess that's about it. If you guys want to be in any of the groups that I'm on, Montana Bigfoot Project, we got over 5,000 members. That's over on Facebook. And I let my admins over there run the show on that one. I am constantly on the one on MeWe, which is World Bigfoot Central. And man, do we have some amazing researchers that are in there all the time. I was telling these guys before the show, it was Track Thursday, apparently, because everybody posted their best track pictures. And William had a 22-incher, and Blaine Tyler had a 22-incher he just found like 2 days ago. And then we posted some pictures of Jerry had of a 17-incher that he casted. And who else? Oh, Barry Webster's pictures. Rich Soul showed up over there and posted some pictures from Res Squatchin from Barry Webster of some monstrous, gigantic tracks he had. And I went, well, apparently there's a trend here. This is now officially Track Thursday. Thanks for all the input, guys. But yeah, if you guys want to keep up to speed on that, not only their stuff, but other stuff, good stuff that we scoop up from other channels and whatnot gets posted there. 4 or 5 different things to look at every day. And you can find me over there. Come on over to MeWe, make a profile and friend me. I am Duke Sullivan on MeWe and World Bigfoot Central.
We will put all of the links pin them to the comment section. Larry, do you have any final comments?
Nope. I'd just like to thank Duke for coming on, and we got to have him back on and have a little people show sometime.
Yeah.
We should round up Robin Moonshadow to be on there too. She's the little person expert on the continent.
Hey,
that's all. That's pretty much his research. Yeah,
sounds great.
Fantastic.
Yeah, as far as that goes, you guys got to get your butts up here this summer and come squatching with me in Montana.
Hey, that sounds good too.
Hey,
you're find some of them guys that make those 24-inch long tracks.
Hey. Anybody that leaves donuts on the table, you can count on me and Larry being there.
That's right.
And I'll wake up in the morning and go, the trap worked. They took all the donuts. Wait, there's no Bigfoot tracks here. There's These are just honest beast tracks.
Okay. We thank you so much for coming on tonight, Duke, and we look forward to seeing more of your stuff. Duke has an excellent YouTube channel, and we're going to put the links up for all of that. And so we just want to thank everybody for coming in. We appreciate all of our new members and that's came on our Facebook page. There was about 60 this past week, and thanks to Cam Butner from Dixie Cryptid that put out a little note, and we picked up a bunch of subscribers from him. So we just want to thank everybody, and we want to remind you that a couple of years ago we were asked about having a Beast TV store, and so if you want to check out Larry's gear, go to the Beast TV store and check it out. We've got coffee mugs and shirts and gaiters. There's all sorts of things on there. You can even get you a face mask. So we want to thank everybody for joining us this week, and we will be back again next week. Same bat time, same bat channel. Night, night, footers.
This has been a Sawdust production.